So there is a delicate balance at this time of year, which is why I wanted to make a video. If you happen to have one of these, this is what you must do right now. Hello again, welcome back to the potting shed. Today I want to talk to you about my white star jasmine. Now if you've been watching this channel for a while, you've probably seen me feature this particular plant several times now. I've owned this plant for 5 or 6 years, maybe longer, and it's always featured on my channel. In the summer I put it outside in the garden and more or less ignore it. It grows and grows and I trim it back a few times just to keep it tight and bushy. But it's about this time every year where things start to get a bit more interesting and exciting for me, because I need to prepare it for its starring act in the winter when it bursts into flower and absolutely fills my home with the amazing scent of jasmine. It's my favourite thing about February. The weather's not great in the UK, and so it's something that really brightens up my days when I can look forward to seeing this thing full of flowers and that amazing scent. When it's in your home, it absolutely fills every room. It doesn't matter where you put it. As soon as you walk through the door, you can smell the scent of jasmine, and I absolutely love it. So I thought this year I would actually produce some videos real time about what you need to do at different points to enable to get your white jasmine to flower in the winter, and so you can enjoy it indoors as well. So the first thing obviously you need to do is have it in a pot and not necessarily in the ground. It does grow outside in Europe. It will die back every year and then hopefully sprout from the base, and it's a naturally climbing and scrambling plant, so it naturally wants to cling onto things and climb up. So you'll often see it climbing up a fence and various different structures in the garden. If you keep them in a pot like this, then it gives you the opportunity to keep it outside in the summer to grow on and then bring it inside to enjoy the flowers. But it doesn't stay inside for long because it does prefer the humidity and the temperatures of being outside. So right now we're coming up to the end of October, and it's about the time you need to start preparing your jasmine. As I said a minute ago, I've kept trimming it back to try and keep this tight habit, and in fact this year I've kept it tighter trimmed than I ever have done. Usually I leave it to about here. Now trimming it back will stimulate more branches to grow, and the more branches you have, the more forks it will put out and the more flower spikes it will put out, and the more flowers you will have potentially. So that's why we want a strong bushy plant. The only thing about doing it really late in the year is you're potentially not giving it enough time to sprout new growth and then essentially new flower spikes. So I would recommend doing that in midsummer, so it has already put out enough branches to create those flower spikes. So the one thing you must do with star jasmine to get it to flower in February is subject it to the colder temperatures in autumn or fall. So I deliberately leave it outside at this time of year so the colder nighttime temperatures will trigger it into producing flower spikes. You don't want to leave it outside so long that you get a hard frost, because that will damage the tender new growth, and those potential flower spikes will get burned and won't produce flowers. So there is a delicate balance at this time of year, which is why I wanted to make a video. If you happen to have one of these, this is what you must do right now. Keep an eye on the weather. Keep it outside to experience those cold temperatures so it receives that cold nighttime temperature trigger to produce the winter flowers. If you bring it in too early, it still thinks it's summer and won't get that trigger. So you do need the colder temperatures at this time of year. But keep a close eye on the weather and the weather forecast, because it's not good if it gets too much of a hard frost. You will need to bring it in before that. So let's assume it's been outside long enough like this one and it's got the cue. And if you have a look at this particular one, it's already producing flower spikes. I don't know if you'll be able to pick that up. They're quite small. I'll do some B-roll for you so you can see. But there are already flower spikes forming, which means it's received the signal, and so I can bring it in now and put it somewhere where it won't get the frost. Now, if you're going to bring your plant in at this time of year, it's not great to bring it from the outside temperatures. In the UK at the moment, we're getting nighttime temperatures, I don't know, maybe around 10 degrees, something like that. It's not getting really cold yet, but going from these sort of conditions, daytime highs of maybe 15, into a centrally heated and drier environment, it's really not going to like that. It's going to be too much of a shock. It's going to dry out and it's not going to be happy. So for the transition, what you ideally need to bring it into is maybe an unheated conservatory, a front porch or back porch, which doesn't really have any heating, or if it does, very low amounts of heating. It still wants to get bright sunlight because it still needs to grow on and produce more flower spikes. The other thing that will happen if it gets too warm is the flowers will come too soon before the rest of them have developed, and you'll get one or two come out and die very quickly. You want to get it gradually. The slower this process you can make, the more flower spikes get produced and the more flowers you'll have at the same time. So you want this process to be really slow, where it's sending out more and more flower spikes without actually flowering yet. So you've literally got 2 or 3 months where it should be doing nothing but producing flower spikes over this period between November, December and January. If you have a greenhouse in the garden that you can maybe put a frost heater in there, that would probably be sufficient. It will be warm enough and bright enough during the day, and as long as you can control those temperatures at night to stop it getting too cold, that would probably work too. So if you have one of these, take a good look at it and see if you have any flower spikes on it yet. If you do, like this one, then you can start thinking about bringing your plant in and avoid any problems with the frosts. If you simply don't have any cooler rooms in your house, the best thing you can do is keep it as far away from a heat source as possible in a bright location with bright indirect sunlight, but try and keep it as far away from the heat source, and maybe mist it or put a humidifier next to it just to bring up the humidity level so it doesn't dry out as much. So to prepare it for coming inside, I want to do a few things. Firstly, just give it a general look over, check for any stowaways, any snails or pests that have made this plant its home over the summer. You don't really want to bring snails into your living area, and certainly not around your other plants when it's going to have a field day. And it's amazing where they'll hide, so check underneath the pot and just generally look through the branches and see what you can find. It's a good opportunity to just trim back any dead sections of branches that are no longer producing viable stems. Anything that is not going to be useful for this flowering season you can chop out, and that will also stimulate a little bit more growth from the base of the plant as well. I'm going to go around the surface of the soil and just remove any weeds that are growing on the surface. And for this plant, because I've had it for quite a few years, it's had a few repots recently, but there's a lot of root in this particular pot. I know that the root's quite close to the surface. There's not a lot of top growth here. I think I repotted it. When did I do that? Possibly springtime this year, but it grows very strongly. So what I'm going to do, there's plenty of space in the pot here, so I'm just going to add maybe an inch of general purpose potting soil into the top of here, just as like a mulch or a top layer, just to feed the roots gently for the next few months. It's been fed a slow release fertilizer over the summer, so it should have plenty of energy, but just for good measure, a bit of soil in the top here, a bit of potting soil won't do any harm and may just add a little bit more food for the roots that are on the surface here. So just for good measure, really. make sure you don't cover the base of the plant or any areas where there are shoots coming out of the base, because you don't want them to damp off. This is one of the luxuries of having a potting shed. You can make a mess and you don't have to worry about it. So that's it for this video. Get out there and start preparing your jasmine for this year's flowering season. I'll do another update in a month or so's time so you can see how the flower production is getting on, and obviously once it starts flowering in February, I'll show you how successful it's been or not been, depending on how things go. I don't know if I've cut it back too late or there's enough time to still produce a load of new flower spikes. It is producing them already, so I know I'm going to get some flowers. Will I get enough? We'll just have to wait and see. So stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hit that bell notification. That way you'll be notified when I produce a new jasmine flowering update. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you very soon. Bye for now.